define League MX as the shoot your shot league.
You do expect higher performances and better things from Club Americas, but it's the inconsistencies.
Isn't this inconsistent though?
I will maintain that the U.S. men's national team came out to the knockout round despite terrible coaching.
Like they have a student discount maybe to go to Pumas games? Like they got it, right?
No.
To take that next step, I think it's still undisputed that you have to go to Europe.
He's going to be on the ground for the majority of the time. No,
I
look back at highlights.
That's the Christian Pulisic treatment, though.
Same.
We're going to have to stop this. We're going to start arguing on this podcast, aren't we?
Welcome back to the Real Futbol Show. I'm Geno Gonnello. This week, Edwin and Lizzie are both away covering the CONCACAF Champions League, doing busy things and having fun in Paris right now before they head over to Istanbul. So with that, we are bringing on Alex Windley again. She joined us last week. Talked a little about Inter Miami and the firing of Phil Neville. And she joins us again this week, and we'll talk a little bit more MLS. We got CONCACAF Champions League. So a lot to break down, but before we get into all of that, Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Geno. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, an action-packed week again. Lots of stuff going on. We had some players returning for the first time this season. We had some big wins. CONCACAF Champions League concluded on Sunday, which I think is where we'll start. It is the biggest news, I feel like, of the week. Leon go to LA. They get a 1-0 win. They defeat LAFC on aggregate 3-1. Not the result that any of us thought would happen. I think a lot of us thought with that goal at the end of the first leg that LAFC kind of had the upper hand, and Leon proved all of us wrong. So we'll start with this, Alex. What went wrong for LAFC in this match?
Yeah, I think it starts with the coaching. Honestly, I thought Steve Cherundolo coming out in that flat back five with three center backs, I think it kind of threw them off a little, and you know they didn't know quite how to mark Leon's front two, and you know the defense did look a little sloppy, especially in those first super hectic first 20 minutes of the game. It was end-to-end stuff, and you know it showed in the first goal that Leon scored. It was mismarking by the LAFC's back line, and you know they and Yorio was able to smash it back into the back of the net in the 20th minute. So yeah, I thought defensively the lineup, Cherundolo got it wrong. You know, maybe they should have stuck with that 4-3-3. So yeah, I thought LAFC in that regard got it wrong, and yeah, everyone I think kind of underestimated Leon a bit. You know, they had their chances. They stuck to their tactics, and you know they came out with a winning mentality, and it worked for them.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, with the back five, it seems weird to switch it up going into such an important match. You would think, especially at home, you would go with your best lineup and your best option. Chiellini was brought in, who, if I recall correctly, Chiellini hasn't played in many matches recently. So that already off the top, you're kind of gambling a little bit. And yeah, I think, again, I think LAFC included underestimated Leon because none of us really expected LAFC to get shut out at home. That's something that, on a Champions League night in Los Angeles in the final, LAFC you expected to come out, guns blazing. And if they did lose, it would have been 3-2 or 4-2 where they gave up goals, but they went for it. And it feels like a little bit with that back five, they kind of sat back a little bit and we're kind of trying to defend instead of putting their best front foot forward and using the attack that they typically have. And it cost them in this one. And Leon do win the championship, the CONCACAF Champions League. I think I read, is this the first in their history?
I believe so. I'd have to double check, but I think so. Yeah. So congrats to them.
Yes, congrats to them. And once again, an MLS team loses in the CONCACAF Champions League final. Only one MLS team has ever won, Seattle last year. So, that, I guess, imbalance in the wins continues. We'll start with LAFC, and discussing them moving forward before we discuss the MLS as a whole. Can this LAFC group still be labeled? There was a lot of talk going into this season and the way they've been playing and the way they've dominated CONCACAF Champions League. There was a lot of talk about considering them up there with some of the best teams ever, possibly the best team ever, if they were to win CONCACAF Champions League. Can you still label this LAFC group as the best team ever if without winning the CONCACAF Champions League? Can you name them that or give them that name? Or is it, is it hard to do that considering there's not that extra barometer of winning that extra trophy, outside of MLS?
I don't think so. I know that they've been super good this season, and the way they play and the players they were able to bring in last season. Gareth Bale scoring that winner and that equalizer in MLS Cup, which led them to win MLS Cup on penalties. So you have to applaud their player transfer, the way they set up their transfers and how they bring in players and still are able to remain competitive. But yeah, this CONCACAF Champions League failure, I don't think you can call them the best team ever quite yet. I think it's a little bit much. I think there are probably better LAFC teams in history. This team's still very good, obviously, but to be the best team ever and to flop in the Champions League final like this, where a lot was obviously riding on the line, and they got the tactics set up wrong, and they were at home, and they still lost. I don't think you can call them the best team ever. Now, I think there were better LAFC teams in the past, but this team is still obviously very good. But to give them that moniker, I think that's a little bit too much, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Because listen. They still have to win the MLS Cup even. That hasn't happened yet. Let's, not get ahead of ourselves. There's no saying they'll go win the MLS Cup. But coming into the season, I felt like a lot of people felt like this team could be one of the best MLS teams ever. And the way they handled CONCACAF Champions League, I feel like they also got, a lot of praise. They were killing it in MLS, really just ran through CONCACAF Champions League, didn't really have any trouble at all. And then get to a position now where you're not facing one of the big dogs of League MX. You're not facing Chivas or Club America or Cruz Azul or Tigres. You're facing León, who's never won the Champions League before. And I think if you ask them, obviously they'd like to go into the final leg winning, but down 2-1 going home with an opportunity to win the CONCACAF Champions League, I feel like that's a pretty good position to be in. And they were not able to get the job done. And I think we've had enough MLS seasons now where winning the MLS Cup, I think, is not enough. Even in a dominating fashion is not enough to consider you the best ever team to play in MLS. I think that you need to start to win trophies and you need to start to, win more than one trophy in a year, which then brings me to my next point. Will an MLS team ever win a double or even a treble? Obviously, this is a popular topic now with Manchester City doing what they're doing over in England. Is this something that can ever happen? And what needs to change for it to happen?
Yeah, you probably know what I'm going to say. The roster rules need to be a little bit more relaxed in order to do that. I think even Steve Cherundolo said that as much, which is funny coming from LAFC, where it seems like they're able to sign literally every other player. But the rosters, they need to expand a little bit more. So the money, it's not so heavily DP invested, and it's kind of spread out over the roster instead of it being the highest three paid players on the team. So basically what I'm trying to say is that it should be like the salary cap should rise and the DP rule should be relaxed a little bit, just expand the roster so that MLS teams can buy more talent and invest in their clubs, because there are tons of teams in MLS that want to spend and go for these trophies, like you said, Geno, and they're kind of handicapped. LAFC, Atlanta United, Inter Miami, for all of their failures, they still have owners that want to spend. They want to go and expand and bring in good players. And then you have, teams maybe like the Colorado Rapids and some others that, their owners are not the best. And, that's the thing. You got to spend more, first of all, in order to win these things, number one. And number two, I think the biggest thing is, just spending more on the roster. I do think that with Seattle winning last season, it showed that MLS teams can do it in the current structure. But still, I think that giving MLS teams, more opportunity to spend on their roster, from top to bottom, getting some of those legacy MLS clubs to spend a little bit more. I think more spending overall will just only help the league and bring in world class players even more so. And, it will help them in tournaments like this where you need your benches to step up and to play well. And you can't just maybe rely on your starting 11 because, God forbid one of them gets hurt, and you need that quality backup player. So, yes, the MLS rosters need to be allowed to spend more. And I think that'll significantly close the gap from that Liga MX dominance in the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it's tough, right? Especially with the way roster rules are. And Steve Cherundolo, like you mentioned, did say, did talk about this, when he said, basically came out and was not mincing words when he said that really the MLS is at a disadvantage with the way the roster rules are and the way, it's not an equal playing field, he feels. And I think there need to be changes for teams. We've seen with the rosters how it affects teams playing in the CONCACAF Champions League and the MLS. I mean, we saw it with Seattle last year. I think we've even seen it with Philadelphia this year and how they were not the same team during the CONCACAF Champions League run as they have been the past few weeks. They've been an absolute tear. And maybe easing some of those roster rules and allowing teams to spend a little bit will give them that flexibility and will allow them to be, a little bit handle the load a little bit better. Me and Edwin have had this conversation already where, it feels like MLS teams don't go for like cups, it's like the US Open Cup doesn't feel like it's that important. The CONCACAF Champions League is more like, we would love to win it, but really there's like a couple teams who focus and the other 3 teams who are in it really just kind of, all right, if we win, we win. If we don't, we'll see what happens. It doesn't feel like trophies outside of MLS Cup are a priority. And I think that needs to change. And I think maybe roster rules might help that. Either way, though, when it comes to LAFC, it's tough to say, they were given every opportunity to win this game. MLS has helped them out tremendously. On the other side, MLS has helped them out tremendously by basically moving all of their games. Like, Liga MX never had this. I mean, Leon hasn't played in a couple weeks. They lost in the quarterfinals, I think, of Liga MX. So it's been a while since they've had a meaningful game to play other than CONCACAF Champions League. MLS gave them every opportunity to win this too. They helped them out and they still couldn't do it. So there needs to be something figured out because it feels like there's a gap. Like you said, there's a gap, and there's a reason Liga MX teams are winning all these CONCACAF Champions League titles and the MLS teams can barely, they get to the final, but they can't sniff it. So, we'll see what happens there. I mean, maybe roster rule changes are coming, especially with, as we add more and more teams here. We'll see how things play out. But we'll move on now into actual MLS talk. It was an interesting weekend in MLS as well. Nashville. We'll start with Nashville. They went on the road, took on FC Dallas. A big game. I mean, I think one of the more interesting games on the schedule, as we mentioned last week. And Nashville, they get a win 2-1 over FC Dallas. A late goal by Hani Mukhtar. His skill somehow manages to get another one on net, and he just keeps firing on all cylinders. And Nashville are one of the hottest teams in MLS right now. I want to focus on Hani Mukhtar first. Like I said, he's been on fire. The guy's been, absolute nails for weeks now. Is Hani Mukhtar the leading candidate for the MVP at this exact moment? And if not, who is?
Yeah, when I'm on the Hani Mukhtar train, he's been so good for Nashville, for his entire stint with the team. And, this year he has six, he's played in 16 matches and he has 10 goals, 6 assists. That's a super impressive, return for what Nashville invested into him to bring him over. And, they're seeing, just an incredible, performances from him on the field. Like, I don't know who else could be MVP at the moment. He's been super good And, I know there's shouts for maybe a Denny Buenga or Thiago Almada because they're both so good. But, Mukhtar's just been on fire for Nashville. And even without a DP number 9, which I'm sure they'll invest in the summer, he's just been carrying that offense and making everything click for them. And it's, really fun to watch as a neutral. And yeah, you just have to respect what he's doing with Nashville. And now they're second in the East, and they've just been playing really good soccer with him. And yeah, he has to be at the forefront at the moment. And he could very well win back-to-back MVPs if he continues this the form that he's in.
Yeah, I mean, he has been prolific. I mean, all season. Honestly, I can't think of. I know Buanga's had a really good season. I know Almada's had a really good season. I know some other players are playing really well, but it doesn't feel like anybody else is on his level right now. And he's been on this level for a year and a half now at this point. He's been just absolutely killing it, leading the line for Nashville, and it feels like at the moment, I feel like he's the clear-cut candidate, the clear-cut number 1. I agree with you because I feel like there's just he's averaging a goal or assist, a goal contribution in 1 goal contribution every 90 minutes. Every time he plays, every time he steps on the field, he's expected to get a goal or an assist, which is ridiculous.
Crazy, yeah.
And we're halfway through the season. He's got 10 goals, 6 assists. He's on pace for another 20-goal season and another, and double-digit assists. I mean, there's no one else in the MLS doing that right now. There's just not. There's no one else in the MLS doing that, and that's why I think he's the leading candidate. Which, it also is interesting to me, how he's not getting any. It feels like he should be getting a lot more interest abroad as well.
Yeah.
But it feels like those rumors have not been as prevalent as Almada or some of the other guys. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as the transfer window starts to open now. But, this Nashville team would be a much different team without Hani Mukhtar. And, I think they have, I have to check real quick, but I think I know defensively, they've been very good. Goals wise, they have 24 goals. He's contributed 16 of them. So 3/4 of the goals that they've scored, Hani Mukhtar, or 2/3 of the goals that they scored, Hani Mukhtar has had, some hand in scoring. So, he is their team when it comes offensively. And so I ask the question now, Nashville extremely hot. Cincinnati also extremely hot. They've won 9 home games now to start the season, undefeated at home so far. Are the two, this is leading up to this, and just to kind of preface this, coming into this, I think both me, Edwin, Lizzie, I think we felt that the West was the dominant league. There was a lot of good teams in the West, and the East was kind of up for grabs. You had Cincinnati at the top, and below that, you weren't really sure what those teams below that would be. But now, would you say that the top 2 teams in the MLS are in the East now? And if not, who is?
Yeah, no, I think, I was reading through some tweets the other day about how, certain, people will rank maybe LAFC over everyone because, that's just, the popular thing to do. But yeah, right now, I think all the good teams will, the consistently, fun teams are maybe a little bit stronger too. Are in the East, Cincinnati, Nashville, Philadelphia, they're all within, Cincinnati's 8 points clear at the top, but Nashville, Philadelphia, New England, they're all within, striking distance of each other. And it's really competitive. And even down to 10th place, they're still, jockeying for playoff spots. So the East has been super strong this season. And I don't think many people expected that, with the West, Seattle, LAFC, people probably thought the Galaxy would be better. Same thing with Portland, same thing with Austin FC. But right now, a lot of these big teams that were really good last season, I'm going to use Austin FC for an example. They're kind of floundering. Austin, they got, I believe, to the Western Conference semifinal or the final, I believe. And, they were, tagged to do really good things this year. But now they're eighth and on 19 points. And, they're disappointing from what they did last year. So yeah, I'd say that the East so far has the far stronger teams this year, and FC Cincinnati and Nashville, they do deserve some respect in the national conversation. They've been very good as of late, and Cincinnati, all those banter years that they had where they were winning wooden spoons and whatnot, now they've turned it around and they look like legitimate contenders this year, in my opinion, at least. And they just look solid, and defensively, offensively with Luciano Costa, and then this summer they can invest that money that they got from Brenner going overseas, and they just have this upward trajectory, which makes it difficult to see them kind of flopping within the next couple of months. So I'm selling I'm all in on FC Cincinnati right now. But yeah, for sure, the East I think is far stronger than what people give it credit for, and hopefully the West can step it up within the next couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the East right now, I think you can make the argument that Atlanta at 6, even. I mean, I feel like just so deep in the East, which is shocking to me because, I thought that the East would, maybe the top 4 teams would be good. And then after that, it would be kind of up in the air. But it seems like, Cincinnati, Nashville, Philadelphia, New England, Columbus, Atlanta, all have had like very good stretches and points where they've been extremely good. And for Cincinnati, Nashville, and Philadelphia, they're all just on fire right now and just getting 3 points at will. And when I look at the Western Conference, I think what needs to be said about this conversation is, of course, LAFC, while they may only have 25 points, they've only played 12 games. So, they are 7-4-1. They could easily be on the Cincinnati level once they get to the 16 games with the 4 games that they have to make up over Cincinnati, and how that plays out. And St. Louis has been phenomenal as well. 28 points. They still have 2 games in hand. Over, over Cincinnati. So there is still a little bit to be determined on the actual Supporter Shield table.
Yeah.
But with the way these teams are playing right now, it's hard for me to say that Nashville, Cincinnati are not the 2 best teams in the MLS right now. I think power rankings wise, it's hard to take LAFC off the top because they haven't had any loss. They've only had 1 loss. They haven't played any games. So I can understand LAFC being, at the top. But I think the next 3 teams are easily Cincinnati, Nashville, and Philadelphia. And I think that's no question, in my opinion. I think those are the 3 next best teams, which is a lot of fun when it comes to Eastern Conference playoff time. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I want to ask you, though, Cincinnati or Nashville right now? Obviously, Cincinnati currently leads in points, but at this current moment right now, I don't think they've played each other yet this season. Which team do you feel is better and maybe even better suited to go on a run in the playoffs?
That's a good question. I'm leaning more towards, I don't know. That's a difficult question. In the playoffs, I think Nashville, they have such a good defense that, I think they can just score 1 and then bunker the entire time, which is, advantageous in single, knockout round football. You can usually play ugly and win, which, I will say Cincinnati have shown that they're able to do that this year. So I think if Nashville get a DP striker in the summer, I think they can compete. But right now, this sounds super basic, but I'm just going to give the edge to Cincinnati because they've just been on this crazy tear and they have it all together and their defense is clicking. Their goalkeeper, Roman Celentano, he's clicking too, and just in incredible form. Luciano Costa up there, Brandon Vasquez up top. They just have all the right pieces and the organization's going in the correct way, and they look good. And they're just going to continue building. But like I said, if Nashville get that DP striker in the summer to help out Mukhtar, it's great watching Hani do superhuman things on the field. He needs that help, eventually, and it'll, come back to bite Nashville if they don't get him that striker up top. So right now I'm giving the edge to Cincinnati, but I do think that could change in the summer if and when Nashville get that number 9 that they desperately need.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting conversation when it comes to looking at Cincinnati, looking at Nashville, who's the better team in the East and possibly the better team in the MLS. I mean, again, both on absolute tears. But, when you look at Cincinnati, home field advantage is obviously huge when it comes to the playoffs. They currently have an 8-point lead in the Supporter Shield. They currently have an 8-point lead in the East as well, obviously, as Nashville is in second in both. But for me, defense wins championships. And so I'm going to go with Nashville. I think that their defense has been unbelievably solid the entire year. I mean, even if you compare it to LAFC is going to have 10 goals so far this season in 4 less games. Nashville's only given up 11 in 16 games. That's, almost a half a goal a game. That's, less than 0.75 goals a game. Like that's a very impressive record. And I think that that's huge. Again, home field advantage is tremendously important. And Cincinnati has improved defensively, which was a major, major factor that they needed to improve in. But I'm going to give Nashville the edge defensively. And I want to see Brandon Vasquez be a little bit better up front and score more goals. And if I think he can score more goals, I mean, they've been tremendous without him doing that. And so we'll have to see what it's, what it ends up being if, when if he can get firing on all cylinders. So I'm going to go with Nashville, but I understand, Cincinnati it's hard to bet against them. So
True.
Let's move on to Inter Miami, obviously your expertise. They fired Phil Neville. This was their first match under Javier Morales, their interim head coach. Let's start with the starting lineup because game was we'll talk about the game in a little bit of craziness going on throughout the game. Let's start with the starting lineup. Thoughts on the first starting lineup under Morales, and does it tell us of anything that we can expect moving forward if things are going to be different, than they were under Phil Neville?
Yeah, so listening to Javier Morales, he just really wants one thing from the players, and it's commitment and hard work. It's not that the players didn't show that under Phil Neville, but, under Morales, he's coached several of these academy products, so he knows, what they can bring. So right now he just wants hard work and, togetherness, to kind of calm the storm at the moment because, it's just the messy craziness. They fired Neville and they're prepping for the summer transfer window. So a lot's just going on for the club. But yeah, the starting 11 was no real surprise. 4-2-3-1 with Benjamin Kramashki starting at that number 10 spot. And, the same old back line that, you usually get with Inter Miami with Kufstov, Kamal Miller, Franco Negri on the left, Yedlin. So nothing too crazy. And then you had David Ruiz starting next to Arroyo and just a 4-2-3-1, Joseph Martinez up top. But I think it's hard to really judge this game because Kamal Miller got sent off, in the 9th minute for a 7th minute for a really crazy tackle on Benteke, who was clean through on goal. And it was a clear denial of a goal scoring opportunity. So I don't think anyone had many complaints, but I think the biggest surprise was that Miami's ability to hold on to a 0-0 game for so long. I don't think DC didn't score their first goal until nearly the 80th minute, and for Miami to hang on that long without even conceding a goal, it's still super early days, but it shows that Morales, he's not really he's going hard on them, and he wants commitment and he wants to fire and he wants everyone to fight for each other. And, that's what they did until, the 71st minute when Donovan Pine scored that, the 76th minute before Donovan Pine scored that crazy goal, which, he kind of scooted in. And I think it was an own goal on Drake Calendar. But yeah, they played hard, and the starting 11 was nothing too crazy. And the Miami play in the US Open Cup tomorrow. So let's see how they'll be able to get on with a full starting 11 proper. Without any red cards, and let's see how they get on, in their first real game under Javier Morales, I would say, with 11 players.
Yeah, you took the next question out of my mouth. I was going to ask about if we can learn anything. I don't think we can learn anything from this game, truly, like you said. I mean, red cards so early in the match, being bunkered down the entire time, just trying to prevent a goal. It's hard to learn anything from it. But I think from a starting lineup perspective, I would agree probably what you would expect. It's nice to see the young kids out there again. And they performed all the way through. Ian Frey comes on and scores a goal, and really fought all the way through. And it seems like the team is ready to play for him, ready to take accountability. Drake Callender spoke about accountability in his press conference after the match on Saturday. So it seems like they're ready to take accountability for what happens on the pitch and to kind of turn a new leaf. And I think Javier Morales, again, knowing all the academy kids, being with the club for so long, it is a good coach to have there to kind of settle things down and kind of calm it down a little bit. But it's hard, like you said, to tell anything from this match because of the red card immediately, within the first 10 minutes of the game, and then kind of the game gets flipped on its head. So we'll have to talk about Inter Miami. Obviously, again, like you mentioned, U.S. Open Cup match this week. So we'll have to talk about them next week as well to kind of figure out if there's actually anything changing or if this is kind of similar system just with a different coach. Again, it seems like it's hard to tell this close, but it does seem like the players are motivated again to go out there and perform on a higher level and give all they have. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I want to talk about one more thing before we go on to our standout performers and games of the upcoming week. Emmanuel Reynoso made an appearance this weekend. He's back for the first time this season after he was suspended by MLS after he did not show up to preseason training due to what the club called personal matters. He returned from he's Argentinian, right? That's where he's from.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I wasn't getting it mixed up with someone else. But he returned from Argentina back in early May. Gets his first minutes this past weekend, 65 minutes. Had a couple of chances created. Helped, play a ball in that eventually led to the game-tying goal. Your thoughts on his first performance of the season and how he performed and helped out Minnesota on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, the fans were, super pleased to, they gave him a standing ovation and when he was introduced in the 65th minute. And, it's clear that they number one, they needed him back. I don't, their place in the standings is, maybe, seventh place, which is probably not where they want to be. So they needed him back. And, the fans showed their appreciation for him. And yeah, I thought he had a good game for, a good game by his standards, considering the fact that he hasn't, I'm presuming, didn't play football for at least a couple of months. And he had a, decent game. Like you said, created a couple of chances, had a couple of shots, two chances created, 43 touches, which is good for, an attacking midfielder. 3 passes into the final third and completed 80% of his dribbles. So, a decent showing for a 1-1 draw for them. And, I think Minnesota will be pleased that he's back in the field and that they can, use his return as sort of a platform to spring on their season as, they want to climb up the table. So hopefully his presence now can help them, just play a little bit better and climb up that table and be the player that they know that he can be. He's definitely, when he was last season, specifically when he was, good and ready and fit and firing on all cylinders, he was, an excellent player for them and definitely the cog in the machine that Minnesota United want to be doing. So I thought he played well, good, decent attacking midfielder, linking up play, doing his usual stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'm intrigued to see how this continues, if he's going to continue to come off the bench or if he's fit enough to go that full 90. And it'll definitely be interesting to see how they go on from there. I'm looking at Minnesota's schedule right now. Their next fixture, against Montreal, which, they haven't been having a good season. So hopefully, Minnesota could, use Reynoso during that game. And, I would bet money on Minnesota probably winning that one because, Montreal's in bad form. So, I think it's just encouraging for them to see that. And hopefully he can build on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I would expect him, maybe 45 minutes on Saturday or this coming week. I'm assuming their game is on Saturday. I'd expect him to get some more time as we continue to, I'm sure, continue to build him up into, starting shape. But what does Emmanuel Reynoso add to this Minnesota team that wasn't there already?
Yeah, I think it adds, creativity in that final third, which is, obviously cliche to say, he's an attacking midfielder. But yeah, MLS is probably not the most technical league. Yes, there are technical players, but you want that verticality and physicality and quickness. And Reynoso can give you that quickness, especially in transition. So having him back will be huge for Minnesota. I'm looking at just the team fixtures and stats already. I don't think they've, scored much from open play this season. So obviously that will be helpful. Getting Reynoso back, just having the creative player in the middle of the field. And yeah, they're 24th in goals per match, which is 0.0, which is not good. And, obviously now they just need some more in that central area. Yeah, and not too many big chances created, and yeah, they're just desperate for something to click on offense, and Reynoso is quite literally the perfect player to be able to do that. So hopefully him coming back to the starting 11 will just give them that extra oomph in that final third, and it'll be very intriguing to see how Adrian Heath. Adrian Heath, I believe, the head coach of Minnesota. I have to double check. I think I'm confusing him with someone else, but yeah, it's going to be huge for them to bring that back. Yes, Adrian Heath. It's going to be huge for him coming back into the starting 11, and I'm super intrigued how he'll just fit in, and like you said, he'll probably come off the bench and then work his way up to that full 90 minutes. So yeah, super excited to see them.
Yeah, no, I think you look at some of the teams around the league, right? And I hate to bring up Inter Miami, but you look at how their lack of a creative midfielder has cost them this season. It's kind of you can see what a creative attacking midfielder can do for a team. And Emmanuel Reynoso, we know, is one of the best players in this league, and had a phenomenal season for Minnesota last year until he had some injury concerns towards the end of the season. So it's easy to see that he's going to add, even in the 25 minutes he played the other night, what he can add in the attacking third and the creativity and the balls that are played. And he's just a talent that, is above a lot of the other players in the MLS and just brings a quality that this Minnesota team needs in attack. They like you mentioned, they do not score goals. They play defense and hope they can find a goal and, off a set piece or something like that. And so with the Reynoso, I think this team can be a little bit more attacking, a little bit more free flowing in attack. And hopefully, move up the table a little bit for their sake, and find some form, because this Minnesota team, they have a great crowd. They have a great stadium. We were there last year for All-Star, the All-Star weekend, or All-Star week. And it's, Reynoso and they deserve good football in front of them. And so, they're going out there in 20-degree weather watching your snow games out there. So, they deserve good football.
Yeah.
So, Emmanuel Reynoso coming back is definitely going to add to that. And the final question I have on this, and really the final question, over MLS in total or in all, before we get into those last couple topics, where does this Minnesota team rank in the West now with Emmanuel Reynoso, you think?
That's a good question. I think honestly, I think they'll go as far as Reynoso and Adrian Heath can take them, because I know, I've been, just scrolling through a couple of, Minnesota United fans and seeing how they feel about Adrian Heath. And I know a couple, maybe a month back, or even last season, where they went through a rough patch, they were maybe calling for the coach's head. And, obviously I think they got it turned around and all that. But, I think they'll just go as far as Reynoso will take them, honestly, and it's, MLS is such a streaky league, you can, like I'll use, again, it's like beat up on Inter Miami Day. I'll use Inter Miami from last season, where they went 0-5 to start the year, and then they ended up finishing sixth in the East and making the playoffs. So, yeah, they'll go. Minnesota will go as far as Reynoso will take them, and they could. They could lose games, but I think at the end of the season, if they go on that good run, Reynoso's back in form, they add to their roster in the summer, they could be, I don't know, like a good. I don't know where to place them per se, but maybe I'll say they'll definitely make the playoffs. I feel. I think they'll definitely make the playoffs over some of these other Western teams that are struggling, maybe like the Rapids, Kansas City, Timbers, that look a little inconsistent. So, I definitely think they'll be in playoff contention. I don't know where. I think the top 4 spots are kind of a lot, but from like 5 through maybe 6 through like 9, I think they'll land somewhere within there.
Yeah, so when I look at Minnesota, you look at the table, they're in 7th right now, which I feel like is completely outperforming where I thought they would be, just based on watching them and the results that they've gotten. It feels like Minnesota should not be in 7th place. So with that said, I'm going to put them a little bit higher. I think with Reynoso, they can challenge probably not Dallas in 4. Dallas just, I say this every week. Dallas, there's nothing interesting to me about Dallas, but they just managed to just get results week in and week out. And, they grind it out. They're always in 3rd or 4th in the West. And always see they're just a very consistent team. So I can't see Minnesota leaping into that top 4, but I can see them fighting with Emmanuel Reynoso, fighting San Jose and Vancouver for that 5 or 6 spot around there. So I think I think that's about where they'll end up, which again, them being in 7th already is I'm shocked at that, just reading that. And they are only 3 points out of that 4th spot. So we'll have to see what happens with Emmanuel Reynoso when he gets fully fit and what he can add to this team. But it's they're gonna it's a big step in the right direction for them. They only have 15 goals on the season, which is second to last, I think, in the MLS.
Yeah,
tied for second to last in the MLS. So not great. So having Emmanuel Reynoso back will add to that. They've only given up 18 goals all season, so that's a good sign of the defensive capabilities that they have. Now it's time to see if they can, step it up on the offensive side. Let's wrap things up here. We got 2 quick things. We'll go through them real quick as we always do. Standout performers of the week. Alex, who is your standout performer of the week?
I'll go with Julian Carranza from the Philadelphia Union. His 2 goals when they were playing CF Montreal were, really great. And that first one specifically was, just a crazy, curving outside of the box. It just snuck into the bottom corner, and it was just a lovely goal. So I have to give ups to him, scoring a brace and I believe back-to-back games. So, Carranza firing on all cylinders for the Union now. And, they started the season off a little bit rocky, but now with they're they kind of, I don't want to shade them, but they didn't do well in the Champions League, and now they can focus now on MLS, and that's been good for them because they were able to just go on an absolute tear now. And Kranz has always been, since going to the Union from Miami, he's just been he's just been an absolutely brilliant player and a treat to have in MLS, players like him, which, maybe eventually he'll go to Europe one day. So, given the props to Julian Carranza from the Union, those 2 goals, brilliant.
You stole my pick, so I'm going to have to go a little bit on the fly here. I was going to say Carranza, too, because he's been on fire lately.
Yeah.
But my standout performer of the week, I am going to go with the Columbus Crew as a whole. I feel like them, they can just score at will. Lucas Zelarayan and Cucho Hernandez specifically. They went up 3-0 on Charlotte, a good Charlotte team. Early in this match, they did give up 2 goals, but came back, scored in a crazy 5-minute span. There was 3 goals in this match against Charlotte, but they score 4 goals. They're just they're so much fun to watch. They're a lot of fun. They got to be up there with some of the most, I think they said this on the broadcast too, up there with some of the most watchable teams in the MLS right now. With Zelarayan, you have Zelarayan, you have Cucho Hernandez, you have Aiden, is it Aiden Morris? Is that what it is in the middle? Aiden Morris, who is killing it in the middle for them, youngster. Arfston had a nice goal this weekend. They just have a lot of fun players on their team. And I love Wilfred Nancy. I will say this over and over again. I think he's the best coach in the MLS, one of the best coaches, at least in the top 3. So I'm going to give the edge to Columbus on this one. I think, their performance again, scoring 4 goals. It's never easy to put 4 goals in the back of the net, especially against Charlotte. So, I'm going to give the edge to them. And now we're moving in next week, your game of the upcoming week, Alex.
So many to choose from. It's crazy, but I think I'm gonna go with Toronto FC and Nashville. I think the Hani Mukhtar show is fully in effect, and Toronto, coming off the crazy off the field issues for them, and that draw against Minnesota United. I think they're gonna want to get back on into the win box, and Nashville is probably not the team that will be easy for them, but I think there'll be a good clash between a Toronto side that want to win so badly and try to shrug off all those negative narratives that have been going around their team, and Nashville will want to continue to climb the Eastern Conference table. I said earlier they're 8 points back from FC Cincinnati, so they're going to want to get a win, and Toronto's going to want to win, and Hani Mukhtar will be killing it, and Lorenzo Insigne is going to continue to do Insigne things. So I think that'll be a really great game at BMO Field. Really excited to watch that, and hopefully it gives some great action on the field.
Yeah, and just to clarify, these are games from the weekend. Tomorrow there are matches, or today if you're listening to this on Wednesday, there are matches between St. Louis and Dallas and LAFC and Atlanta, which will both be phenomenal matches to begin with. Those are both really good matches, but we're sticking to Saturday. Or Saturday and Sunday. We're sticking to the weekend. For me, my game of the week is going to be down at the bottom. It's going to be a late one, but it'll be Philadelphia versus San Jose. We get a couple really good Western Conference, Eastern Conference matchups here. We get that and Cincinnati over Vancouver, or Cincinnati against Vancouver. But with Philly and San Jose, I feel like this is another opportunity for Philly to show that they are back. They're back in the situation that they were last year, operating on all their cylinders, firing on all cylinders, and it's an opportunity for them to go out and put out another good performance and assert themselves as one of the best teams in the league again. And for San Jose, it's another opportunity to go out there and prove themselves once again. I mean, this is a San Jose team that's currently in 5th place, a team that has performed really well and particularly performed pretty well without Cade Cowell over the past couple weeks. They have they've been really good without him. I mean, they haven't lost in the last 3 games, so that's always good to have a star player missing and to perform well. But San Jose, another opportunity to prove that they're a team that can compete not only in the playoff spots, but in that top 4 of the West, which is something I think we are seeing that they can do, especially after the win against LAFC a couple weeks back. Now they have another opportunity to prove it against one of the other MLS elites, I guess you could say. So we'll be watching that one. All right, I think that about wraps up. Alex, you got anything else you wanna touch on before we wrap the show up?
Well, one more thing. I think the U.S. dropped their roster for the Nations League final, which some interesting names on there. Have any thoughts on that? I will shout out Drake Callender, Inter Miami player. He's been the best player on Miami's roster this season, so he definitely deserves that spot. So yeah, a lot of interesting names on here, and looking forward to that match against Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, Callender spoke about this too in the spoke about this in his press conference after the match. There was a question that asked him about, or that was asked to him about, how he felt about being called up, and obviously he was, very appreciative of the opportunity. I think this roster, I think the big thing is what's Balogun going to do? What are we going to see with him? And I mean, it's hard to even talk about the roster, right, when it comes to this situation, because they're without another coach. And now they're on to BJ Callahan, I think it's pronounced. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. And again, the United States men's national team facing a bit of adversity here. They do have, it's just an interesting situation. They've had 3 coaches within the last 7 months. So what should we expect from this? I'm not really sure, but we'll see how it plays out. I mean, listen, this team, if you listen to Lizzie, she will tell you that this team performed extremely well despite the fact that they had a terrible coach. So, this team has faced the adversity before of of coaching situations, maybe not the tactics that fit the system. So, they performed well under Hudson. So hopefully this team can just pick up right where they left off. I would imagine there's not going to be too much change in terms of how they play. I would imagine it's going to be remotely the same as it has been for the past couple years, since Berhalter took over. So I'd imagine this is not going to be much change in style of play. It's more of a facing the adversity thing and having a different coach again and facing a team in Mexico that, you always want to beat. It's a rivalry matchup. That's always difficult. So a lot hanging over the heads. We know Christian Pulisic is excited to be back out there after a tough season at Chelsea. Gio Reyna looking to prove himself again after, what ended up being a pretty solid end to the season for his personal career at Dortmund, maybe not for the team. But yeah, I think looking out to see what Balogun can provide, I don't think Tyler Adams isn't on this roster, right? Because he's still hurt.
No. Yeah, I think he's still recovering from injury.
So it'll be interesting to see who the replacement is there. You'll have Musa, McKinney, and I would guess Aronson would probably. I don't really know how that's going to shape out. I don't really know.
Maybe. Yeah.
Delatorre probably more of a like for like replacement for Aronson's more attack minded.
Yeah.
So a couple questions to be answered. I will always say, again, it's always important to beat Mexico. That's number one. But at the same point, I wouldn't put much into these matches and into the Gold Cup matches and even into what we see in Copa America next year, because I think that the United States spends there's 4 years and there's no qualifying. So there's time to work out some kinks, figure out the coach, figure out who the next coach is. These games are obviously important. You want to win every game you play. But if the United States men's national team doesn't perform at the top quality or the top level that we're expecting them to perform at, don't fret, don't sweat. It's not going to really it's not going to be that big of an impact on what happens 4 years from now, which is the important thing. So this summer is I think a lot about getting some new players in, figuring out some things, figuring out the coach, figuring out the direction that the U.S. men's national team wants to go. And then next summer and beyond, I guess we can start focusing a little bit more as time goes on how this team performs and how they'll look come 2026.
True.
So that's what I have to say on that. That's my long-winded answer on the U.S. men's national team. When does the U.S. women's national team get announced?
That is a good question. I hopefully soon, because I'm looking forward to seeing one.
I would imagine it'll be soon. I believe media day for them is out in LA on the 27th.
Nice.
So, I would imagine it'll be within the next week or so. You would think, give them a couple weeks to be together before they announce it. So, obviously the U.S. men's national team did their roster announcement and their media day in the same, in conjunction with each other, as it was. Time constraints, but I would imagine this will probably get announced before the 27th media day. They're in training camp right now, I believe, or they're going to training camp. I think relatively soon. So I would imagine that a roster gets announced soon. So keep an eye out for that. We'll obviously break that down when it comes. Keep an eye out for any Messi news. If Messi does break and perhaps happens to, come to Inter Miami, we will, of course, have all the content for you. We'll probably have a special podcast dedicated to that. So keep an eye out for that. And a place to keep an eye out for that are on the social channels below, both of our faces, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Make sure to follow us there. Of course, YouTube as well, which is where you're watching this episode. And I think that about wraps it up. That about wraps it up. So, Alex, thank you for joining me again. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure. And we'll have to get you on more and more. And of course, if anything breaks with Inter Miami and Messi, we will have you on again. To you guys out there, thank you for listening. We appreciate it. We appreciate you following us and just make sure you subscribe, follow these channels, and check us out on all our social channels. And with that about wraps it up, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Peace.
Bye.